Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Master Instructor Roundtable with myself, Wendy Batts, and my friend and co-host, Mr. Marty Miller. Marty, how are you today?
Great. Thanks, Wendy. Appreciate that. Hope you're doing well.
Oh, always, always. Well, today is about creative conditioning. And this topic actually came up because I did a presentation at Fit Expo when we did Optima Academy this year. There are a lot of really good questions, and people asked if we would bring it to the Master Instructor Roundtable. So that's where we are, and that's how this came about. So, Marty, I'm really excited, as always, about this topic because I spent all day talking about it.
Yeah. And when you mentioned this to me, first thing went off in my head is, how, like I always say, my rule number 2 is give people what they want while you give them what they need. So this is a way, an extension of that is, there's the science of what we do, and I'm always based on the science. But a lot of times our clients and, people don't care about the science as much. Maybe they will at some point, but you've got to figure out a way to not just do things, but do things with the science behind it, but get people excited, meet them where they're at, motivate them, but then kind of backfill that science. So Wendy, I know you've done a great job on this topic, and I'm excited to go through it.
Yeah, and I think as it is, when I first became a personal trainer, one of the hardest things for me to understand was a majority of my clients, and I don't want to say it was man over female because it wasn't always the case, but especially my men clients, they hate doing cardio. They didn't like it. They felt like it was a hamster on the wheel, that they always had to do some sort of treadmill or be on the bike or do the stairs. And that is absolutely not the case. And so I think it's very important that we bring to the forefront that there are so many different options that you can do. And we are going to talk a little bit about the differences of doing steady cardio versus doing interval training, and then how you can mix it up. But cardio is super, super important, as you're going to see, because we need to take care of not only our muscles and our bones, but also our heart to keep us working in the right direction. So
yeah, no, that's a great point. And Wendy, it's one of those things where, I travel. So I was watching this documentary on Netflix about blue zones, and that's, where people are sedentarians and they move all day. So since our society doesn't do that, we have to put that in activity. So it could be the formal cardiovascular work that we're accustomed to that you mentioned, or it can be what you're going to get into, but we have to move more as a society. And for males and females, cardiovascular disease is the number 1 cause of death. So let's just say it that, and I'd go around training a lot of personal trainers for my full-time role is we don't do a good enough job programming cardio. We don't. We do the resistance, we do the mobility, we do all that cool stuff. And then sometimes we tell clients to go do their own thing. So hopefully after today, we'll reset the priority, but also give you all that are attending here today kind of some like aha moments where you're like, okay, I can get now people to connect and want to do more cardio.
Yes. And as a plug for Random Fit, we actually did a podcast on blue zones. So you should definitely check that out if you have not already. However, this is the Master Instructor Roundtable, and when we're talking about creative conditioning, and I did mention that your clients were going to come up with every single excuse of why not to do cardio, here are some of the excuses that I used to get a lot of. And when you have someone say, I don't like cardio, one of the very first excuses that you're going to hear is, I don't like it, so I don't do it, or it is so boring. And you know what? It doesn't have to be.
Nope.
Doesn't have to be.
No.
Another one that is very common. Do you schedule cardio on only days that you work out, or how do you fit this into your schedule? Because you only have so much time in a week to get it all done. However, if you're going to come and see me 3 times a week and you don't have time to do your quote cardio, we're going to implement it into your workout, and we will show you how to do that. My best ones are, when you're thinking about some of these exercises, you've got to ask yourself, are these exercises progressive? Because one thing, and Marty, I know you get this often, is when we hear people doing boot camps and interval training and they have not really worked out for multiple years sometimes, and then they go and do a boot camp, they're sore, they're miserable, and then they're done. They're just done. And that is not the proper way to start.
Yeah, and that's why, Wendy, you and I always say the OPT model is your best friend. So whether that's more the resistance side of things where you go corrective into stabilization, then the 3 phases of strength, you're progressively getting people ready to move. Boot camp was a job interview. It's, can I destroy you mentally and physically and see if you're going to quit? And maybe you're not meant for the military. We've done webinars and Master Instructor Roundtables on boot camp progressions. But the key thing is progressive and get people to start where they're at.
Mm-hmm. And a common question that I usually get from some personal trainers is I don't know how to be more creative. I feel like I do the same exercises over and over. But then I think too, it's going to be really important that when we go through and we talk about this, what type of program are you doing and what is their ultimate goal? You have to know that information from the start, because some of this stuff may be applicable and some of it may not. Every individual is going to be different. So as we go through this, keep in mind who may, this may be most important and appropriate for, and who this absolutely wouldn't work for this client because of whatever reasons, So just, we wanted to provide some insight, maybe give you guys some things to think about when you're designing programs. And I think hopefully you will find this to be very useful.
I know they will. So Wendy, I know you put this together. So if you want to jump in here, I think, I've already talked about it, but as you put this together, there might've been a few things that jumped out at you, but first and foremost, it's the one bullet point you made. The number one cause of death around the world is heart disease, and it's getting worse. And this is recent data. Thank you for that, Wendy, World Health Organization. And if you check out the Random Fit on Blue Zones, or the new 4-part series that just came out on Netflix, it's a direct correlation to movement, to quality of life. There's other things, of course, but we need to move more. It doesn't have to always be high intensity, but it's consistent movement daily.
And this table came straight out of the book, and it's just to show you the differences of why is it important. And as you can see, it's not just one bullet point. It's how do you want to be able to live your life? And Marty and I have done a lot of different conversations, had different podcasts, different webinars. We've talked about this in roundtables. There's a difference between just being a number of age and actually living life and living a healthy life, because it doesn't matter if you're 90 and you're bedridden versus if you're 90 and want to move. I would prefer the 90 and want to move. And keeping your heart healthy is obviously super, super important. So some of these that you see on that chart, it shouldn't be a shocker. It's just, it is what it is. But in order to maintain health, we need to be able to move at various speeds. We need to challenge our heart, make sure we're challenging it in different ways. And there are a lot of different ways to do that.
And this is why, again, NASM, is so important with the way we do things, is move well, then you can move often.
Exactly.
Right? And then you can move at more intensity. So, but it comes back to the quality of movement, and that's why we start with correctives in our assessments. Then if they move well, they won't be sore. They'll understand that it's, hey, I can go for a walk in my knee or my back or my hip. So it becomes this, vicious cycle of, I want to do more now because I can do it, right? That's where we got to start with the assessments. We got to start with the fundamentals, and then we can get very creative with it and have fun.
And I think it's important too, just to pinpoint the very last bullet point where it says reduce injury of obesity and diabetes. And as we've seen in so many statistics, we're seeing our youth, these numbers rising in our youth population. And so if we know that our kids aren't moving as much as they used to, they're on technology more, they're really not getting outdoors or not participating in sports. We know PE time or recess time is starting to decline in some of our schools. This is going to be super important, but we need to make it fun. We need to make sure, again, that it makes sense. We want it to be progressive. And so therefore, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about just the differences between steady state as well as interval next.
So, I'll go through this here real quick. What is steady state? That's where, you're getting your walking in, you're kind of doing that even keel type of exercise, that continuous exercise that is the consistency in keeping effort even and regulated. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, right? You're not looking for an 8, 9 out of 10, that talk test where you can talk the entire time. So it's at low to moderate intensity for 20 to 60 minutes. This helps, recovery walks, or this could be a great way to get people started if they're new to it, but great for recovery in your higher intensity. Enables that more efficient use of fats and oxygen to full activity. Pausing there. We're not doing it to target maybe fat metabolism. That's just what's happening. At the end of the day, if we got into weight loss, you'd want to burn more calories, but that's the error people make. They go towards the higher intensity when they're not ready for it. So you guys will see that in here. And then some other key points is, as the slide comes back up with the steady state, you can get creative, right? Mobility drills, dynamic warm-up sequences, core, balance, those lower intensity plyometrics if it's applicable, and then speed, agility, and quickness. And remember, speed, agility, and quickness is on a scale too. doesn't have to be explosive. It's what you can move and can control.
Well said. But then I think it's important to, when we look at steady state, it is continuous. It's something that is the time that you are going to do something like be on a rower or be on a machine more times than not if you're inside a gym, or going for a walk, playing with your kids outdoors, maybe even playing a fun hit around with tennis or some sort of sport like that. That's not just all out as hard as you can. When you're taking that and then you're looking at interval training, these are the short repeated bursts of high intensity exercise that you're doing. These are more of the exercises you are going to see at boot camp. And so when you're looking more and more at the slide, you're going to see there is a very big differentiation between what you're seeing in steady state versus this. And here, when we're looking at what does it do, we're matching and sometimes surpassing the results for functional capacity. So muscular power, fat and weight loss, metabolic adaptations, and we're comparing that with moderate intensity. So, we're not doing this for long periods of time. And I think that's very important, because when people go to a boot camp and it's a 60-minute boot camp and you're giving your all for 30 seconds and not really giving yourself rest, that's not always as ideal as if you're sometimes taking a step back, doing some steady state training, getting your body prepared for that, and then doing just bursts of interval training throughout your workout.
Yeah, it's a great fun way to do it, but you got to earn that right, as we always say, to get to it. So we go through that steady state, and then we can start doing that interval training. And this keeps people, looking for something more. Like, hey, if you continue to do your steady state for 2 to 4 weeks, we're going to move you to this. So it gives people kind of a prize. So maybe they don't get as bored if they are bored, because they know it's not going to always be the same thing.
Yeah. And today on the Master Instructor Roundtable with myself, Wendy Batts, and Marty Miller, we're talking about creative conditioning. I think it's very, very important we understand the differences between steady state as well as interval training. And then now we can actually start to really think about some exercises that we can blend in here. And we have to think about the population. Who is this best for? Well, in my personal opinion, it's best for everyone. It's really good for your athletes. It's going to be very good for your young clients. It's going to be great for weight loss clients because we're keeping them moving. But it's also, in my opinion, really good for seniors. It's good for anybody that wants to build some kind of endurance. And it's going to be based upon where they start and where they are in their programming. And that's where us as personal trainers can come in and be creative. And it's not about just having them hop on the bike or running on a treadmill for so many minutes or seconds or doing something like that. We can actually do it just with vertical loading and programs. And just for clarification, when we talk about vertical loading, it would be going from one thing to another, to another, to another, reducing, hopefully minimizing the rest periods that you have to take in between that, and doing more of a circuit. So for example, you've already done your flexibility, you've already done your core balance and reactive, so what I call the extended warm up. And now when you're doing body parts, it could be a total body, and then chest, back, shoulders, bis, tris, legs, and then rest, and then repeat that again. Or you can throw in some different types of exercises that may increase their cardio a little bit. And that's going to be completely up to you and what your client can and cannot do.
Now, I love using these type of workouts. They're engaging, they're fun, they're very time efficient, and you can get creative with it. And, I've put in, dynamic stretching, all kinds of different things with it. And sometimes this will be my workout on the go. If I only have a half hour where I'm traveling, I can really get a lot done in a very short period of time.
That's what I tell people too. When I can do a full workout in 30 minutes or less, when I just really focus in on what I want to do. Mm-hmm. If I've done my stretching and foam rolling and I go into the gym and I actually do 2 rounds of every body part that I want to do, I can get in and out in no time. And so it really sometimes takes me back, and I'm not increasing my tempo. My tempo is where it needs to be based on the phase of training that I am. So when somebody says I can't really do a full body workout and get it all in 1 hour, that sometimes really throws a flag up to me, like, well, why? And I think that's when we start looking at this, are you doing a horizontal loading program where you need to take a rest period in between? Is someone trying to build hypertrophy or trying to get bigger? You have a different outcome. This is more for clients, again, that are weight loss clients, people that want to keep moving, people that you have to really put a strain on the heart as well as the muscles that you're working. And so when you're looking here on the very last point, when we talk about ideal time to add in these types of exercises or blasts, That's really up to you as the trainer. And that's where the creativity comes in. So some examples that I've provided here would be put them as the last body part if you're doing that vertical load. So once you've done all the body parts, maybe you're going to take them outside, have them run the stairs a couple times. And then they take their rest, they get some water, and then you repeat the body parts and then put them back on the stairs. It could be just after you've done 2 or 3 sets of your workout, then have them do something on the skill mill or the rower or something, that's very challenging. And you're doing that for maybe a little longer period of time versus just a 10 to 30 second bout of hard intensity type training. And then you can sprinkle it in. So doing, your planks into plank walks, and you're going at a faster pace, or doing a push-up with rotation and then trying to do some plyo. All of that is going to immediately increase your heart rate. It doesn't always have to be the burpees. It doesn't always have to be the mountain climbers. This is where the creative part of you needs to come in and think what is going to increase someone's heart rate, but also be safe for their programming.
Yeah. And Wendy, the saying time is money, and it is. So when I'm in the gym, because I've got plenty of other things in my life, but I will not let my life, dictate my health. So when I'm in there, it's game time. I'm very focused. I'm not there to talk to anybody. Sorry. I'm moving, and every second is something in my program. I don't ever, unless I was going to do a max strength day, which is rare because it's not something I need, and I would get that maximum more type of strength with my power where I'm doing the superset. I'm doing something. Right? I'm doing a single leg balance. I'm doing a dynamic stretch. I'm doing something is always being done in my workout, right? It has to be done because first and foremost, I love to work out, but I don't need to be in the gym 2 hours because it's, intensity and duration have to be opposite of each other. You do not tell me you're doing a high intensity, hard workout for 2 hours, unless you're a Navy SEAL and you're doing that type of stuff. Now that even goes outside the norm of what we're trying to do in fitness. About 45 minutes is that optimal window where you could have intensity, and that's about the duration, right? So why not get more bang for your buck? Plus, the research shows us that's where you're going to get more of the physiological adaptations anyways. So today I did upper body push-pull day phase 2. So there was a rower there. So what do you know? I put on the resistance, and I did a 150 to 250 meter sprint for my pull for that 45 seconds, right? And then they had the infinity rope, and I put the magnetic resistance on there, and I was doing that as part of my pull. I didn't just have to do a cable row, right? I could implement some of that cardiovascular demand while I'm doing my pull. And, it made it incredibly fun. I got my calories in, but I got in and out of the gym in 45 minutes after my mobility because I had other things to do today, but I was not going to miss a quality workout based on time.
I have to chuckle because I do that when I go to the gym. I actually put on a baseball hat and I put it as low as I possibly can. I put my AirPods in and then I go. So people don't know that I'm a trainer. I just go in my own business. I don't talk to anyone. I don't look at the TV screens. I just change my music to what I want and then I just go. So I find that pretty funny because when people are like, well, you're not very social at the gym. And my response is no, because I'm social when I'm at work, which is at the gym. I'm not social when I'm at the gym to do my own stuff.
I'll grab a cup of coffee with your smoothie afterwards or before if I need to, but that's a scientific time period. Like I'm not going to go put half, work in and change the outcome because I had to rest a little too long. No, like I'm following the model. No exceptions. I'll talk to you before or afterwards.
Indeed. So when we look at the different types of challenging exercises, I think often we just assume when we think of, okay, I need to throw in a cardio something, or I throw in the blast, or if they're late, this is their punishment. There is a progression. And you have to think if you're in a prone position, that's also challenging because somebody has to hold their body weight up and they're fighting gravity. So you want to make sure that it's challenging, but you also want to make sure that it's progressive. And so if you're in a prone position, can they even do a push-up? That's going to be first and foremost. And then can they do something like a mountain climber? People are used to moving their legs a lot more than they're used to moving their arms. So for me, yes, when I look at the differences between a plank walk, which is where I'm coming up and down from my elbow to my hands, that might be way more challenging for someone than just a mountain climber where they have to hold that position because they're using their legs. So this is just an example of a progression and a prone position that I would suggest, which would be mountain climbers, then plank walks, then something like the bear crawls, and all three planes of motion. So I start them in sagittal, move them into frontal, do some transitional movements. Then I always, this is my thing, speed ladder using the hands. And those of you guys that have never done that, I challenge you to do that. But then after that, it would be burpees. And people are like, well, why would you put speed ladder on the hands before you would put burpees? And the thing is when I'm doing that, I have both feet on the ground at all times. I mean, they're moving in different directions, but I'm also not changing from a prone position to a standing up position and going in a very quick motion. Guys, that's super, super challenging on the heart, going from up to down and up and changing those positions, not even including if you're adding a push-up with the burpee. So do not add burpees as your first cardio blast or metabolic blast or interval type thing that you're doing in your program, because that one definitely needs to be progressed because of the demand that it has on the heart.
And the thing with the burpees, Wendy, you crushed everything. But a burpee is a power-based exercise, right? Because I'm dropping to the ground. I have to eccentrically decelerate myself, then try to find some level of power to push myself up. The compensations are generally horrific. I'm just being honest. If you don't, and again, I don't have the best hip mobility. So when I go to pop up, I have to turn my feet out. So I have to determine, is that what I want to do or not want to do? So the burpee got its claim to fame because it was hard. Okay, great. But let's go back to safety. So for me, instead of doing a burpee, maybe what I would do is kind of like a down to up. So I have someone stand, I go down to a lunge, and then go down to the other knee, slowly lower to push up, come back up to a lunge, then stand up and back down. It's still going to get their heart rate up and down, but I'm not collapsing and I'm not compensating, but I'm still getting their heart rate up. So there's nothing wrong with getting up and down, but it doesn't always have to be explosive. Use common sense. Yes, a burpee can be done, but that is like the tip of the iceberg from a performance standpoint. So it's okay if you never use it either.
Yes, and these were just some examples. What would your prone progression be? This would be mine. And all to their own, because some people never use the speed ladder on their hands. That is super difficult because the time that you have to be able to spend in that position, plus that they can't hold a plank for a long period of time. And remember, in phase one, we want them to come up, hold 3 to 5 seconds and go down and do that 4 repetitions. They've had to, as you say, earn the right to even just do a plank walk and hold that plank position for multiple periods of time, even though it's a stabilization or easy exercise. As you know, if you're drawing in, squeezing your glutes, push-ups, planks, everything can be very, very challenging. So you want to make sure that when you're progressing, that you've progressed them into an ability of them to withstand proper activation of the abs and glutes, maintaining a neutral spine, and then adding some of the creative movements here. We usually always see the movements on, know what to do on equipment, but this is just some ways of thinking outside the box a little bit. And that actually brings us to the next slide of when we did this in person. Of course, there were way more slides. I did not bore you guys with some of the other slides that I put in there with statistics and the research showing the importance of this. But these are commonly used blasts that I do with my clients. These are no way of looking at it like, okay, this is from easiest to hardest. However, if you look at it, I think you can see my thought process and progression. What about the jumping jacks? We've taken those out because that was the 80s. Jack LaLanne did it. Everyone loved him, but we can't even do those anymore. People don't do them, but think about it works every single body part in the frontal plane. So it is a very, very good exercise. Have someone do just 25 of them. Have them do it with their arms out. If they have shoulder issues, maybe it's just elbows out. Be creative, but start easy, or what we say easy, in an up and down position, and then go into those progressions. And then as you can see how I finished it out doing leg circuits, which is my favorite exercise of all time. I do them on all 3 planes of motion. But then Marty, to your point, with what you do in Techno Gym, I think it's important too, that you can talk about some of the different equipment and how they can blast that into their workouts.
Right. Yeah. I'm always looking for, again, going back to maybe my sports medicine day and then finding NASM is, what's my highest impact exercise with lowest risk? So some people will never be able to jump again, right? And that's totally fine. But doing sled push, even if it's not an explosive sled push, that marching, kind of walking against resistance, a rower is phenomenal because it's triple flexion, triple extension in an unloaded position. So these are some tools you use. The curve non-motorized treadmill, the skill mill you mentioned, forces you to get triple flexion, triple extension, forces you to stand up, forces you to be the motor and the brakes because it's non-motorized. So you get more caloric expenditure minute by minute. So that's where I just would ask everybody, take a pause and study everything that you're doing once in a while and be like, okay, why did I do that? Was it just because, or is it because like the jumping jack, I needed something dynamic because they were ready to do some, small plyometric exercise and I need to do it in the frontal plane? Or did I just do it because I saw it on YouTube, right? Or Instagram? So, there's always a reason. If you ask Wendy or I, any exercise that we put into our program, if you just walked into our facilities, we're not going to say we're doing this because, period. We're doing this because, comma, we're working in the frontal plane. We're trying to increase coordination in there's going to be a sentence or two afterwards, right? Our client may not always know that, but that is what we're really trying to get you to do with today's topic, is give you some ideas, but think through the process, understanding that people may not like cardio. People may be worried about how it feels. So if you use this as a kind of blueprint, you will be able to hit everybody where they're at, continue to move them, and get them to do more cardio than they ever thought before.
Yes. And be creative. I mean, one of the reasons that your clients will continue to come back to you is because they are seeing results first and foremost. They're not miserable each and every day when they wake up, hopefully the next day after they get done with the workout, but it's also fun. And we need to be fun. We need to build that rapport. You need to be able to have a good conversation, an honest conversation on how they're feeling. And also know too, that if they're really run down that day, they didn't sleep well that night, then maybe taking cardio blasts out of that day is in your best, the best thing for you and your client. However, if they're having a really strong day, they really like to be explosive and do things, and that they're weekend warriors, they want to go out with their kids and do things on the weekend, adding some of this in is going to be very, very beneficial. You're going to find out what they love. Maybe this is some of their client choice things. You're also going to find out what they don't like. And sometimes people don't like it. The reason they don't like it is because it's hard. So then you're going to have to program accordingly. But just because they don't like it or because it's hard doesn't mean you should take it out. They don't like it for a reason. So keep that in mind as well.
And usually the things we don't like is what we need the most.
Indeed.
So Wendy, you kind of talked about this right from the very beginning, be creative in your programming. And I as well kind of piggybacked with having the plan. Changing up exercises is phenomenal. Don't just change them up for the sake of changing them up. Think about, okay, I just did something in the frontal plane. Now I can maybe introduce the transverse plane. That's the kind of change up we're thinking about, right? What's the next progression? Can I incorporate now a total body exercise because they were able to handle the lower body version, the upper body version? Give the rest when needed, right? It's not about, exhaustion, failure to that level. It's about, walking them to the line of fatigue and then coming back refreshed based on the phase of training and the zone of training that you're in, right? Let's look at those work to rest ratios. They're there for a reason. The rate of perceived exertion, all those things that you can monitor, and then give clients that input on what they enjoy. That's what I talked about at the very beginning, is give them what they need when you give them what they want. You know what I mean? There's like a kind of a combination back and forth, and it will absolutely aid in compliance. And before you know it, someone who hated cardio might be like, I want to run a 5K. I've seen it happen over and over. They hated cardio because of something else. They didn't hate it because of the health benefits, right? Everyone wants to be healthy. Everyone knows they need a healthy cardiovascular system. It's just getting to the root cause of why they may not like it and then working around that.
When I think too, this is how you start to build someone's confidence in doing cardio. So if somebody can now do a mountain climber for a longer period of time and before they struggled, or if they could only go up and down the stairs 1 or 2 different times because they needed a rest, or they felt like their heart was ready to explode, then now they're running up and down the stairs like it's nothing. And they're doing that 5 or 6 different times. And you've got different patterning going on, or they're doing the speed ladder. Then you can say, okay, now I want you to go and try to go, like you said, for a walk, and then maybe add some slight little interval runs in there or jogs in there. And then you can get them to become more compliant and doing some cardio on their own, even though you're still having fun and showing them, listen, you can do this. And that's what oftentimes I've seen happen when I've implemented this. People don't like it. They feel like, oh my goodness, I hate cardio. And I'm like, listen, we do cardio in your programming. And then they start to understand, oh yeah, I guess I am. So it's one of those things where I think this is a good way to introduce it. You don't even have to call it cardio. You're going to say, okay, what we're going to do now is a metabolic blast. Let's going to do this for 20 seconds. Do not start for 60. Again, think about your programming. Start 15, 20, 25, work your way up. And then also think about the exercises that you're choosing.
Yeah. And Wendy, I know that we're, coming down to the end of our session here today, or our, topic, but one of the things that just made me think about this is going back to what I said for my doctorate. There's a group of people that they have to understand the why, or they have to have a goal. So you need to understand what, we've talked about this before. Why do they want to work out, right? Is it because they had a scare from their doctor? Is it because they have a goal to go to their 25th high school reunion, because they have their first grandchild coming? It doesn't matter necessarily, but you can then always use the scientific principles of what we're doing to help them get to what's most important for them, right? Not everyone likes to exercise just because we need to. A lot of people have to have some type of goal or understand the versions of, like, this is important because of what. But if you can tie the programming to that, they'll understand it, they'll appreciate it, and then it's easier to hold them accountable. Because I can say, hey, Wendy, I thought you had that 5K coming up, or Wendy, I thought you had X, Y, or Z. And we do it in a positive, not a negative by any means, but it shows them, yep, that's exactly what I need to get here.
Well said.
Thanks, Wendy.
Well, Marty, I can talk about this. Like I said, I talked about this for almost a day, and we did a lot of these within a workshop. And so I'm hoping to get the opportunity to be able to do this again in person, because we actually go through each and every exercise to talk about cueing and proper ways of implementing the different exercises and ways of regression and progression, as always. So if you guys get a chance to join me in the future and we are covering this topic, I promise it is more in-depth and detailed, but we go through it as well. However, if you have any questions regarding what we talked about, then always feel free to email me at wendy.batts@nasm.org, or you can find me on Instagram at wendy.batts13. And
my information is right here, dr.martymiller72 on Instagram. And then email marty.miller@nasm.org. And like Wendy said, let's hear from all of you. Tell us what you want to talk about. Make sure you check out my coffee talk every week on Instagram, as well as Wendy's, what's the word I'm looking for?
Random fit.
Random fit. Sorry, I was talking. I had so many things in my head at one time. But yeah, so great ways to get more content. But thank you guys all so much for attending today. Wendy, love the topic. And again, I can't wait to see you teach this live as well. Thanks everyone for joining today. We'll see you next week.